Welcome to Integrative Lawyers of the World, where we believe that lawyers contribute to the healing of the world in all sectors at all levels. We believe this because we know lawyers who are doing just this. Hi, I'm your host, Carrie Raleigh, and our guest this episode is Femke Wijdekop. She is an earth lawyer from the Netherlands. She is legal counsel and content manager of Stop Ecocide Netherlands. She's a publicist and independent expert at the UN Harmony with Nature Initiative, an associate of Restorative Justice Netherlands, and a member of the International Society of Therapeutic Jurisprudence and the Project for Integrating Spirituality, Law, and Politics. I recently watched a TED Talk of hers, which I encourage you to do. And one thing that she said in there that really jumped out at me was, there are no human rights with the dead planet. And with that, we know the importance of what she is doing to help the planet and to help all of us. I hope you enjoy our conversation. Hi, Femke. How are you today?
Hi, Carrie. Thanks so much for having me and hosting me and for the very beautiful words in your introduction. I feel very honored.
Well, we feel very honored to have you here. Like I said, I did watch your TED Talk. It was very powerful. And I think we were talking about it. It just seemed to explain Earth law, the importance of it, and why you are doing it. So I thought we could share some of that with our audience today. So can you just explain a little bit, what do you mean by Earth law and ecocide?
Yes, sure. Earth jurisprudence or Earth law is about looking at the Earth and her inhabitants not as objects that we can use and exploit as dead matter, as it were, but as subjects, that they are obviously living entities, that the Earth is a living entity, a living Earth system. And it's about how can we balance our legal system and move from this right to exploit that we currently have in our legal systems towards a duty of care for the Earth based on a ecocentric or biocentric view, that is that the Earth is a subject under law, that it should have rights that should be respected, that humans are not the master of the universe or the dominators of the Earth, that we are merely a member of the Earth community, that we have relations with the other members of the Earth community, and that these relations should be based on principles and rules that lead to the harmony of the whole. So the idea is, how can we flourish as an Earth community, and how can other beings flourish? How can we rebalance the relationship that is so out of tilt at this moment? So Earth jurisprudence or Earth law, that is the philosophy. One of the main pioneers in this movement is Cormac Cullinan from South Africa. He wrote this book called Wild Law, which was very impactful. In order to rebalance our relationship with the Earth, we should give rights to nature, or actually recognize that nature has rights. It's not that we give it as if we are the bestower of rights to the natural world. It's more that we would frame it that way in order to have nature better represented in our legal system, better defended, able to, for guardians, obviously human guardians would have to be the spokespersons for the natural world, in order to better create this duty of care, and also to see when the rights of nature are violated, and when there is a very serious case of violations of rights of nature, then we can talk of ecocide. So ecocide is mass damage and destruction of ecosystems. So ecocide is a way to involve criminal law in the protection of the Earth, meaning that if you violate these rights of nature at a really large scale, so if ecosystems are destructed at a massive scale, this should be a crime. And we call that ecocide. And of course, it reminds of the genocide, but in the sense that ecocide means literally to kill your own home. So that is what it translates, and this idea has been around for 20 years. Sorry, no, for 50 years. Actually, in 1972, Olof Palme, at the first UN international meeting on the environment, he spoke of ecocide as a crime. He described the Vietnam War, the defoliation of the jungle there, as an ecocide. So that was 50 years ago. And yeah, I'm involved in this movement almost 10 years because I saw a TED Talk by the late barrister, Scottish lawyer, Polly Higgins, and that really activated me to become part of the movement to recognize ecocide as a crime, but also to read about earth law, earth jurisprudence, and to start writing about the rights of nature. So that is how I found this space where I feel very at home in law. And it is coming from a very different paradigm than the anthropocentric dominant legal paradigm that we have. And that's why it resonates, because I was never really interested in environmental law, the old school environmental law, because of it being very technical, anthropocentric, and it's really about mitigating the harm rather than questioning if we are entitled to do harm and to question the system we have, also the economic system. So
With the duty of care, to me that establishes, a negligence or a tort type claim that the earth has a right to a duty of care, and the rights of earth as well as standing. So let's go back into the duty of care for us to protect the earth and the rights of the earth. When we say rights of the earth, what are you talking about?
That is more speaking generally than really legal technically. I see the growing support and the codifying also of duty of care towards nature as the support for the rights of nature, as actually ecocide law being tabled, actually making it into law, and for example in Belgium. Also the climate cases, the Dutch climate case, the historic victory, was based on a duty of care that the government has to prevent dangerous CO2 emissions under a tort article, but there was this aspect of the duty of care, so that the Dutch state violated this duty of care to not cause endangerment through the too high CO2 emissions. And later also human rights were involved in the judgment of the Supreme Court. But I see this as a move from the right to exploit, thinking we have the right to exploit, to a duty of care, which means that we change our attitude from this is an object towards this is something that we are related to. There is a relationship, and it also means that there is a subject under law. It is not that earth jurisprudence or earth law necessarily speaks about this duty of care, but that is one of their principles, that care is one of the building blocks, an attitude of care. Why? Because we are part of a community. This is a community member. And because we relate with a being which has intrinsic value. And this is why it evokes care, it should evoke care. Also because if we harm the whole, we harm ultimately also ourselves. So this is also why do we have a duty of care for other humans? Because we are the body of humanity. We are connected, and the harm to others, and it is also harm to another part of ourselves as if we are one body, if you know what I mean.
One thing that you struck me when I was thinking of the rights, when you said it's changing from the human's right to exploit the earth to a shift of the earth and nature have a right to exist and
Yes.
a right to thrive.
Yes.
Changing that paradigm
Yeah.
or that way of thinking.
Yeah.
With the duty of care, and I think I was getting too myopic in it, I'm thinking of, at least in the US with our basic negligence claims, one of the first things you have to establish is that there is a duty of care.
Right.
Not everyone owes a duty of care to everyone else. So
Yeah.
I'm thinking, who owes the duty of care to the earth? To me, it seems like almost every human being owes a duty of care, every business, every government.
From the perspective of earth jurisprudence and earth law, we do.
Then who has standing
Yeah.
to assert a claim on
Right.
behalf of earth?
Yeah, this is a very interesting topic. So who could be a guardian in the court to represent the earth? And there's different visions. Some people speak of, for example, that indigenous people would have the knowledge and the very embodied knowledge, to have a very intimate knowledge of the ecosystem that they have dwelt in for centuries, that because of this embodied knowledge that they should be seen as the primary spokespersons for an ecosystem where they dwell and live. Some say, though, ecologists with a lot of scientific technical knowledge of the nature affected, for example, the river or the lake, that they also have standing because they also intimately know, but from a scientific point of view, the affected nature. Sometimes it can be a nature conservation foundation that guards, in his statute, says that it guards the interest or represents the interest or looks after the interest of the ecosystem. So there is different interpretations, but I think what they have in common is there should be a fine knowledge of the ecological functions of the system. But then if it's only cognitive, then you also get the problem of, can we really grasp all that is happening, and don't we miss out on some more embodied level of knowledge? So this is a discussion, and I think it's a very important discussion. Also, sometimes when we want to represent the indigenous peoples in question as the stewards or guardians, we have to look very closely if it would not endanger them more, because if we acknowledge the rights of nature and point at the indigenous peoples as the guardians, sometimes in the context of still an extractive economy, they would become another obstacle or enemy of extractive industries that still do their work because there's no real rule of law. And this could lead to increased endangerment for these environmental defenders, which I have heard from the Ecuadorian and Colombian environmental defenders, indigenous ones. So we have to be careful not to romanticize this story too. So it asks for a lot of perspectives. As maybe a white person, to romanticize that the indigenous peoples are the guardians of nature, and that sounds very nice. However, what are really the consequences for these kind of decisions? And is this what they would like? Or does it give them another burden on top of already a lot of other burdens they're fighting? Because that's what I've heard as feedback. Sometimes it can lead to bigger human rights violations for them because of the context of still a very extractive economy. This is a very interesting question, and we have to be also very sober when we talk about these things and involve, I think, experts in political sciences and experts in economic sciences to come to good conclusions. Yeah.
I was reading an article about how Democratic Republic of Congo, it's accepting bids to license its rainforest to the highest bidding oil company.
Yeah.
And when I read that, some of the articles like, oh, how can they do this? The whole world needs the rainforest. Yeah. My thought was, yes, the whole world needs it, but they also need to thrive they need money, they need to support, they need to be able to grow and develop just like other ones did. So instead of just saying, you can't do this, shouldn't the whole world come together and say, we're going to pay you, what's the highest bid for the oil company? We're going to pay you more to protect your rainforest.
Yeah. This happened in Ecuador, that they created a Yasuni, that is a rainforest, I think in the Amazon, a certain region. They created like a trust fund, and that they agreed that they would have money coming in from other states and other countries in order to make this a reserve that would not be touched, in line with the rights of nature that are put in the Ecuadorian constitution. And I think it is quite disputable if this had a good ending. I think maybe it didn't work out after all, but I have to look into it. But this idea, it is very good and lofty, and it is also with a big learning curve. And I know that some of the areas, they are close to the protected areas in Congo that actually there should not be allowed oil drilling because it has a protected areas title. So then we come also to the boundaries of law. So there is laws that say this is protected area. But then what happens if a country does decide to auction off?
Who defines or identifies this as being a protected area?
I think it is under the also recognized in the Congo legislation that it is a protected area.
Oh.
And I think it is both a internationally recognized protected area, maybe even at the UN level, and also in their own domestic jurisdiction. It is close to a protected area, or it will go through a protected area. This is why there's so much outrage about it. It has to do also with rule of law. The example I gave about a Colombian judgment recognizing the rights of the Amazon and a river in the Amazon, in the Colombian Amazon, and saying that some indigenous peoples, they should be the guardians. It's very beautiful, wonderful, but I heard the feedback also that if it's not enforced, where is the teeth of this judgment? Where is the ruling? If the extractive companies still mine and still do hydro dams, etc. So it is a rule of law question, and that doesn't mean that these rights of nature judgments aren't good, but it is really embedded in a bigger context from how of our economy also, because we still have an extractive economy. But I see this earth law as part of a bigger puzzle of how to transition to a really sustainable society. And we have to adjust the legal framework, but also the economy has to transform. And I think it will change the norms and values we have. So this is just part of a very big transition. And we also have to look at other disciplines like economics and especially involve indigenous voices in their thinking and their view of how this would work for them.
It's one thing to say, or I look at developed countries, we exploited our earth, our resources, what we wanted to develop. And now we realize, and maybe we realized a lot earlier, but we still did it. But we're saying, okay, we did this, we're developed. But you in the countries that haven't developed, you can't do it because we all need the earth. So you just, I think that's a little unfair for us.
Yeah. I completely get you. So for me, the earth law and the earth jurisprudence is something I know as the bottom. I feel I resonate with so much, and it's our ecological bottom line, and there's planetary boundaries, so we can't negotiate that we should honor this bottom line and that we should create a healthy foundation. Yet also indeed to involve these questions of equity and to look at the colonial history. And my partner, I'm wearing a dress from Nigeria, and my partner is Nigerian. Because of our partnership, our relationship, we have a son. This perspective of decolonization, about development, about all these topics is also close to me. And I see the danger also of being too much in one bubble and then not seeing the justice issues of another bubble. And these are very valid questions. I think that restorative justice, that's why it will be so important as a conflict resolution model or as a way to deal with these very difficult questions that will create tensions or collision of interest. If you can use restorative justice tools and approaches to look at this and to involve those with the stake to discuss and to look for peace building solutions. That's why I think we really need restorative justice also on this issue of how to have equity and justice for the transition ahead of us. Though we have to obey the ecological bottom line, but how can we also create well-being for people in the global south? I don't have answers to it, obviously, but I think that's why I think restorative justice will be very, very relevant.
There are no human rights. There are no development if there's a dead planet.
I think it has to do, we have to decolonize our thinking. I think our thinking is so colonized as in how we relate to the earth. I mean, it was not natural or indigenous either to people from my country to think the earth is an object or to think in terms of economic growth. It is just for a few centuries that we're having this system. And of course, it also holds for the territories that were colonized. But there's more rich traditions, often of indigenous relating to nature in a different way. And indigenous, I mean the people that lived there before the colonization. So there's so much wisdom there. But we have been colonized with thinking economic growth equates safety. Like I'm safe if I grow economically or if I have enough money. And that is, for me, it is something that has, mind control. I don't know if it's mind control, but it feels like something that has stuck in my head, which is not native to me per se, if you know what I mean.
I have some friends who are economists, and I always talk to them. I'm like, it always seems like if we determine the success of an economy on more growth, more sales, more production, and that's how more money being spent, and that's our measure of success. How can we, at the same time over here, we're seeing for the environment that we need to produce less, live in more harmony with nature, produce less goods. We have to change our way of thinking with our economic growth,
right?
I think, to help thrive at the environmental and at the earth level.
Right, I absolutely agree. And how can there be eternal economic growth on a planet with planetary boundaries? We are seeing the externalities, the harmful externalities of this system are really coming back at us. The feedback is starting to come in, maybe already for 50 years, ever since the first, Limits to Growth report, Club of Rome. But it's knocking on the door much more harder that this is not a sustainable system. And that's with that feedback, I think we start to look at other ways. We start to see that we need to go to another paradigm, and that is the process we're in. But I think the slower we are in responding, the louder those feedbacks will come, and some of them come with delay, and we're creating a lot of harm for the future, and that is very depressing. But if I align myself with what is regenerative, what is a regenerative way of thinking, for me it is really to align with that and to know that if you plant seeds for that regeneration, that it has value, no matter harm that might come, because the seed is aligned with something that is life enhancing, if you know what I mean.
And I do believe like what we focus on expands.
Right.
By focusing and relying on the regenerative aspects, then maybe that will grow.
It will, yeah. I think so. I mean, I notice if I operate like that, and it makes sense. If there is a storm coming and bad weather is coming, then if my plants, they have good roots, deep roots, they are well nourished, and I have planted many seeds, then they are better able to weather the storms, right? And also the trees can absorb the rain and everything. So the plant, the seeds you plant and the garden you create, it has an impact on the after the storm will happen. What will be left? And that's nature, and it should apply also to our society. If you look at very dark times in history, but there were very bright minds that planted seeds that created ideas that were very regenerative, they're still valid today. And if there's a better season, that these seeds, they can flourish, and they can grow, and then we are so indebted or so grateful. Grateful is a nicer word, to those ideas that were planted in the past and that help us further. But the times they were probably sprouted in might have been very dark, because the contrast maybe evoked that this is where life should lead, this is where life is possible.
We are taking a brief break from this conversation to ask for your financial support. With each episode, we hope you can see how lawyers and peacemakers like you are contributing to the healing of the world. It takes many kinds of resources for the integrative law movement to keep going and affecting change. Your monetary donation can help us continue this important work by supporting the activities and the members of this community. Each contribution goes to promote the stability and accessibility of the movement and to support basic expenses like our Mighty Network group, web hosting, social media and event management, and this Integrative Lawyers of the World podcast. Because we like to give people choices, we have ongoing monthly options to match your budget, or you can make a one-time donation. Thanks to our non-profit corporate sponsor, the Renaissance Law Society, US supporters are able to make tax-deductible donations. Supporters from other countries, please check your local tax laws. For ways to support the integrative law movement and our world-changing work, go to our website at www.integrativelaw.com and click on Support the Movement tab at the top of the page. Another great way to support us is to rate us 5 stars and comment, like, follow or subscribe to us on iTunes, Spotify, Google, YouTube or your favourite podcast platform. These ratings and interactions help us get seen and heard by even more people to make an even stronger impact. Thank you for your support and spending time with us today. Enjoy the rest of this conversation.
Can you give a couple examples of successes or gains in Earth Law?
Well, Cormac Cullinan, he did pioneering work with his book World Wild Law. And around the same time, 2010, the United Nations created Mother Earth Day. That was the initiative of Bolivia. And around the same time, Ecuador implemented or codified that the Pachamama has rights, the rights of nature in its constitution, and Bolivia 2 years later created the law for Mother Earth. And those were the first 2 instances, but after that, a lot of new legislation has been created, recognizing rights of nature and also judgment and court orders recognizing the rights of nature in India and in Bangladesh and some Colombia, South America. Also in the USA, they're on municipality levels with the recognition of rights of nature and to codify that in the legislation at the municipal level. So that one is growing, and there's over thousands of laws and judgments available that recognize the rights of nature, as well as quite a vocal advocacy. And in Europe this year, Spain recognized that inland sea has rights, and as Mar Menor, as a way or tool to also combat the terrible pollution going on. So within the old environmental legislation framework, the lagoon was still so polluted, it didn't have enough protection, it couldn't defend itself, it wasn't working. So to introduce rights of nature is to hopefully give it a stronger voice through the guardians that represent it, and to change also how we look at it and how we value it. If something has intrinsic worth and personality on the law, you can't do everything with it. So that is the idea. So that is the rights of nature is very much in a sentence. A lot of in my own country, also a lot of discussion in media and in opinion articles and books. Ecocide ecocide law is really accelerating. Right now there are 23 countries in which there has been motions about ecocide law, parliamentary questions, proposals for law, white paper. So 23 countries with serious political discussion. France has created an ecocide law. Belgium is very close to having ecocide law in its Belgian criminal code and is supporting it on the government level. The European Parliament has supported ecocide law 6 times, and we are working with the European Law Institute to create an ecocide directive. I'm part of that work group, which is an academic product, but something that will be presented to the European Commission. And the European Parliament is now trying to weave ecocide law in the revised European Directive on Environmental Crime. So this is a very concrete possibility for European ecocide law, with growing support in Cyprus, in Spain, in our country, Netherlands, in the UK, and Denmark, and Iceland, and so many countries, there is political support. In some of them, there's majority support, but it's really building. And the main route of Stop Ecocide International is to amend the Rome Statute of the International Criminal Court to include ecocide as a fifth crime, as one of the atrocity crimes, so the worst crimes. And
so is that what you are legal counsel and content manager for Stop Ecocide Netherlands? Is that part of an international organization?
Yes, it is. So it's the Stop Ecocide International is the organization, and we have teams in different countries, in Spain, in France, in Holland, in Sweden, in Italy, in quite a few countries. And I work for the Dutch organization, but we work very closely with Stop Ecocide International. And because our country, the Netherlands, is host to the International Criminal Court in The Hague, that's why, we also involved with, obviously, the lobby and advocacy at the International Criminal Court. And last year, the member states of the International Criminal Court had their yearly assembly meeting. And I think 6 countries actually spoke out in favor of amending the Rome Statute with ecocide: Vanuatu, the Maldives, Samoa, I think Finland, Belgium, I think maybe another country too. So is
that what Stop Ecocide International does, and at the different levels is create policies, draft policies, advocate with policymakers?
Right. That's right. That's lobby and advocacy, is campaigning, especially for the change at the international level, but also at the European level, which we want European legislation, and to support the lobbies at the national levels. And this is going very well. I mean, this is the last 2 years, it has really speeded up. And this is, I think it will happen. And I think already in Belgium, they're already doing it. The government already committed to help make ecocide a crime at the Rome Statute level, and also criminalize it in their own legislation. France, as I said, and Spain is very close, and other countries are very close. So this is becoming a reality, to use criminal law as to help better and protect the environment and nature. And that is criminal law, and the rights of nature and earth jurisprudence is more about the general philosophy. But ecocide law is a way to say, okay, the rights of nature, yes, but if we want to protect them, then we have to outlaw the worst attacks on them. Right. Mm-hmm.
Consequences for it.
Yeah.
If we want to protect it, there has to be consequences for harming her.
Yes.
Which then goes into back to our discussion of restorative justice and earth law, and how they're connected, or how you can see them being connected.
I think a lot of I wrote a chapter together with Hercules Wessels from South Africa for an upcoming publication by Palgrave Macmillan, which is called Environmental Restorative Justice. We wrote a chapter on the rights of nature and restorative justice to actually see the commonalities in the philosophy underlying the rights of nature, which is earth jurisprudence, and the philosophy of the right of restorative justice, which are both very oriented to relationships, starting from a point of our interdependence with each other as humans, but also with the earth, an orientation to peace building, harmony. How can members of our community flourish, be it the human or the earth community? And also that they both have roots in indigenous traditions, both restorative justice as well as earth jurisprudence, indigenous ways of relating to the earth and relating to each other to solve conflicts, etc. So there's commonalities in the philosophies, and also if we look at how to represent nature in court, then a restorative circle would be a very good, we think, a good tool to as part of to try to connect those involved in the conflict, to get an understanding of the harm that was done, and to have those who are harmed and who represent the entity that is harmed to do so in a collaborative fashion rather than adversarial. So because earth law comes from a place of interconnection, if you want to address those violations, are you going to an adversarial strategy, or are you going for a strategy that understands our interconnection, which is restorative justice? Philosophically and intuitively, it makes sense. And also, restorative justice can be part of if there is harm, if there are rights violation, how to set it right, to have restorative outcomes, to have a restorative processing to determine what should be set right by the perpetrator. And also the guardian representing nature could do so in restorative circle. So we look at some of the examples that are there. For example, in the mock trial that Polly Higgins organized, she did a mock trial on ecocide law in the UK in 2011, as if ecocide was already a crime. How would it look like? She had a few cases. They were actors, but there were real judges there, real jury. And she had an ecocide circle as part of one of the trials. Sorry, she had a restorative justice circle as one of the ecocide trials. So we look at that, and we look at a few legislation that hints at restorative justice and rights of nature. And we propose how it could look like. So that is the chapter. So why? Because this is about how do we harmonize our relationships? And that's why restorative justice is very fit to, as a means, I think, to bring in. And how do we get also knowledge and wisdom from a deeper source, which is the community? And that's why it is a very interesting thing to explore. And I have a website called restorative.justice.org, where I write about all these developments where restorative justice is connected to environmental protection, especially from an ecocentric perspective, which is rights of nature. So I keep updates and make updates on that website.
And that was earthrestorative.justice.org?
Right, that's right. Yeah.
We have to look at the well-being of the indigenous population, their interests, their desires, their needs, as well as Earth.
It is already very relevant for conflicts, but I think there will be, unfortunately, so many more conflicts with all the crises, the biodiversity crisis, the climate crisis, and I think that's why restorative justice is really asked for. And also we have at the European Forum for Restorative Justice, that is a European network, we look at these topics and we have discussions and seminars, and also to look at the limits of restorative justice and the possibility to, so really to look at it academically with people who are experts in it for decades. So it's very exciting, and there's people pioneering with this topic in Japan and in France, and they're applying it already, and often to smaller scale conflicts, smaller scale instances of harm. Yeah.
And how you said you were with Restorative Justice Netherlands, does that help? Is it a community where it bridges like the academics in the field with practitioners in the field?
It is a foundation that is the knowledge hub on restorative justice in the Netherlands, and those that work there, they are academics and practitioners. So they're both criminologists and psychologists and lawyers specialized in restorative justice. But all of them, I think, work also in mediations, in prisons, in policy making, in youth tribunals, it's at schools that youth peers and students can handle their own conflicts in a sort of restorative justice kind of setup. So they're both practitioners as well as academics, and they are very interested in environmental restorative justice. And I work with them, and we wrote a few articles, published a few articles on the topic. Also, we have a joint lobby towards the politics now. So, yeah.
Your journey as a lawyer. At the beginning of your TED Talk, you had talked about you went from wanting to leave the law to now living with purpose with the law.
Yeah, I like how you put that. I graduated, I was 23, and I had the opportunity to do a PhD, which was something that I was quite interested in intellectually, but it was someone else's topic or idea. And then after a few years, I noticed that the topic wasn't alive to me. It was quite technical. It was definitely not integrative. It was, I could say, old school constitutional law. And I started to feel the limitations of working in this paradigm, and it was not a nurturing environment for me. I missed emotional intelligence and social belonging, and how this actually was relevant for society at large. So that's why I stopped that trajectory, which was a difficult decision, but it freed up so much positive energy and life force in me, in my own system, that it was really the right decision. It was a day and night difference. I hold on too long because I'm a person who likes to finish what I start. Then I did something very different. As a student, I had worked in a bookstore, a very nice bookstore called the American Book Center in Amsterdam. And it was a very joyful student job for me because we are importing all the American and UK books and information to spread in the bookstore, and it was a very colorful job. So I could work there, and I did, because I was really loving that I was the spirituality buyer, or we call it consciousness buyer, and not just to buy books and sell them, but also to host events and a book club and to do interviews with authors, right? And to host book signings. So it was a very dynamic and colorful and creative place to be. And we got access to very nice authors like Byron Katie and Miguel Ruiz and all of them, because we could access them through their publishers. So I had the chance to talk to very interesting people with very interesting ideas. And then I came across Polly Higgins' work, which was coming from a holistic philosophy, or a very conscious philosophy. We're talking about law and about to protect the earth. So I came across her work while I was still at the bookstore. And then I felt such an activation inside of me that I want to be part of it, because I was starting to miss the legal side. I started to, at one point, miss out on to contribute something to what is happening in society with relating to law and ecology. And so I came across her work, and really through some changes in my life, I started to stop working at the bookstore and start working in this field, though I still kept warm relationship with the bookstore, and later we hosted a lecture on her work in the bookstore. So that is still a connection that I still have to this day. So that's
when you were working at the bookstore, what were you doing? Were you
I was selling books. I was the buyer for several sections, which was about consciousness and spirituality and all that topics. I was hosting the book club, the spiritual book club, every month, and I was interviewing authors and making blogs about it on our website, and also making a radio show weekly, which was really great fun.
and you did that all with the bookstore. That's like
I did that, and with the Amsterdam FM radio, but the bookstore gave a lot of space to initiate this kind of extra things that you like, and also that create value for the customers, because it became about a community. Well, we were trying to build a community, and I think we succeeded in a very nice community. This was really a big opportunity to be exposed to a lot of wonderful ideas, and to also have very interesting customers, and to sort of be a hub of communication. And then it's how I came across Polly Higgins' work, and we started to sell her book, obviously. But then I wanted to go in depth with the legal stuff of it. And I remember that it was, I had to, I wasn't sure if I still could do it. Like, I felt even insecure. Can I still do the law? Can I still be involved in, because I've been out of it maybe for a year or 5. And then I had dreams that I was back in the law library and that I loved it. So I felt my subconscious, or my soul, was really giving me encouragement through my dreams to reconnect with that. And I feel that was really guidance. And if you look the results of it, like, that I would never have thought that I would give a TED talk about this topic. I mean, I would never have thought that I would be on the Dutch TV talking about these things, or in a newspaper, which I have been, because the topics are those that are of the zeitgeist. Like these, the zeitgeist asks for us, zeitgeist. You know what that is? The spirit of the time. So these times, they ask for these kind of ideas. And if you are a person who is on board of this pioneering movement, and you say, okay, because of the topic, I'm willing to stand up and do a TED talk or to be interviewed, things that are scary to me, but I want to give a platform to the idea. My experience, then doors open that are not that would have opened if I would have stayed at the university in my safe space, sort of space. Yeah, what I would think as a safe career. So out of the comfort zone is also where sometimes the magic happens, and it has happened because we have been able to speak with people, connect with people that usually are very, you will see as very high level, and you would not think that you could talk to them or be in a room, or you see that there is an influence to what we have done, and I think it is the idea itself that generates a lot of magic or miracles. If you connect yourself with that idea, also your life can become quite exciting. So that is what I've experienced, and I see it happen to others too that work with these ideas.
How did you, in terms of finding work and earning an income with this, you like, I have this idea, I have this passion, I want to do this, and you leave in the bookstore, how did you go ahead and earn income with it?
Yeah, that's of course a good question. So the upside is the magic and the miracles, and the downside is the financial insecurity, which is also a reality. When I left the bookstore, I had built up a network, and I started to learn skills. So I took some of that with me to support an author with his publication, with his events, with publicity, to help edit his manuscript. So I took some of that work related to books and book selling and promotion publicity. Sorry, that's what I did, and I also did some freelance work with another bookstore. And at one point, because the first few years they were really volunteer for the ecocide movement, and at one point I needed an extra income, and I did something very different, yet something that is still very valuable for me. That is to be a caregiver for people with dementia. So I took a side job to do this practical work. I did it from the heart, which didn't have to do anything cognitive or intellectual. But for me, it's really shown that it has been so valuable in my life in terms of understanding aging and understanding family dynamics and appreciating things, to do that work. And I remember that sometimes, like I spoke to the head of Greenpeace, and he asked also what I did for a living. And I said that, and maybe he thought it was nice, but not relevant at all for the bigger purpose. But I felt actually that there is nothing, I didn't say that he find it inferior, but I felt that this is very important. So to pierce through the status that work has, and to see that it's about care. It's care work. So I think I'm a value-based person. Like, I work for my values, and if this is care, and this is from my heart, and I'm very happy to do that on the side. So that's what I did, and I think that it is very nurturing to do that kind of work, and it puts things in perspective. Also, sometimes idealism can be too blind, or you can be too naive, or it is sort of makes you down to earth. And then a few years later, I started working at the IUCN, Nature Conservation Organization in Amsterdam, about defending environmental defenders. So I started to do green work, where I had both a legal and communicative role. And then later, I also transitioned to Stop Ecocide. So now my income is from this legal green work, but it has taken some time because of the pioneering aspect of it. So then there's no yet funders, or the structures aren't yet in place. So if you can find a way to make it work, that is wonderful. I know I still have to continue with this topic. So it's something that my soul wants. So it will come always with a choice for a little bit more insecurity than maybe another person would tolerate. But there has to be a balance also. You shouldn't lose. We also should be down to earth and pay our bills and be responsible. So sometimes maybe you can't do full on what makes your heart sing, but you can do it maybe 50%. The other 50 is also fine, and it's also aligned with your values. And then you can see how it grows. You know what I mean?
So at the point you were working with the care home or with the elders, you were still, that's where you're bringing in income, but you were writing articles
Yes.
or you're
Yeah.
contacting that. So then later on, when you did have that opportunity to apply for that one thing, you have a record of articles and stuff out there.
I did the TED Talk when I was doing the work with the aging elderly people. Yeah.
How was the TED Talk experience?
Fantastic. It was, I mean, it was something that I would not have thought of that I would be willing or able to do, because for me, it was a big thing. And, you know, leaders do that. And I didn't consider myself to be of that standing or something. But I felt that's why I do this, because because I believe very much in the topic and the idea, and I want to communicate it, and I want to uplift hopefully others with this message, with these developments that I see. I feel it's an uplifting, encouraging thing. I want to give that. So by focusing on what do I want to give and share from my heart, rather on how will I be judged, how will I be seen, will I perform right or wrong? If I focus on that place of a place to give, to share, then I'm in my safe space, because then I'm connected to myself and to my heart. And then I also have my cognitive intelligence, but also a certain heart intelligence, which makes me, I think, communicate better with people, because I connect to them, you know. And I got also, they offered a TEDx coach. So we got a coach that helped us with the techniques of talking, and that was a lot of fun. So I felt ready, you know, I didn't feel ready when I said I will do it, but I knew that I would be ready in a few months' time when I had this coaching and when I had the contents right. And it was a fantastic evening, and it will be a lifetime memorial thing I've ever done. And it was a very nice reception of the audience. And also the best thing is that I've had viewers contact me, a young woman from Mauritius, who says that after watching my TED Talk, she decided to go to law school, and I'm in touch with her now. Her name is Neha, and she resonated so deeply with what I said, and she became a volunteer for End Ecocide Mauritius. So she's setting up End Ecocide Mauritius now, and she's also doing interviews with climate leaders on her YouTube channel, and another an American young man also contacted me that to see my TED Talk, it made things clear to him, and that he want to go to law school, or how can he help advance Earth jurisprudence. And I'm also in touch with him, and now he is part of the Earth Law Alliance, because he has a position at the municipal level as an elected representative, and he joined the Ecocide Law Alliance of all sorts of officials, like most of them are members of parliament or even European Parliament, but he became part of that network. And that is, if I look at the TED Talk and the comments, I see that some people, they say, I was just looking for how to ecology and law, and now I found this. A few times you see a comment that people find it meaningful, and it gives them another nudge of their direction, which is really, I could not have hoped for that. And it's really wonderful. And also that Polly Higgins, I was friends with her. She watched the TED Talk because she couldn't come to Haarlem. That's why I did it, because she couldn't make it. And she watched it, and it was quite emotional for her. And she apped me right after, so she was there, and that is special. I think it's also touched her to see what her effect on me has been. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that with us. I think a lot of people out there, we want to make a positive impact. And you're working for it. And when you're having those two individuals contact you,
yeah,
I mean, your positive impact is reached far beyond them, I'm confident of, but you know, those two individuals, you help shape their lives in a positive way.
Yeah. And that's, for me, it's really passing on the torch. Like for me, it was Polly Higgins. It is Polly Higgins who, with her torch, she ignited something in me. And I feel that this Niha and this my other connection in the US, that fire is in them, and they just needed to see how I gave words to it that resonated and ignited something. That's how I see it. And that I think what you're doing also with this show, you are igniting those lawyers, those viewers or law students that resonate, that have a similar purpose, I guess, to use law for peace building, for the well-being. And it is a very beautiful thing. So thank you for that.
Oh, well, thank you. We end every show, well, sometime in every show, I ask a guest, what does being an integrative lawyer mean to you?
To me, it means that I can be myself and work with the law, because I don't come from a worldview of I'm a separate individual and you are separate and I should be afraid of you or defend myself against you or compete with you. That's not how I operate or how I see. I feel connection to you, to the people around me. I guess my intent is to love people. I guess that's the bottom line. I try to love people and myself, to look for ways to love. And I think integrative law is coming from a love-based foundation, because it's not coming from fear. It's coming from to know we are connected. We are each other's brothers and sisters, or we are members of the same body. And it's coming from that connection. And how can we help each other flourish? How can we help create healing and wellness? And that is really the bottom line. So there's a warmth that I feel when I connect to integrative law, and I work from that. And it is very nurturing. And I'm very grateful for this community that exists, because Kim says community gives courage, and it does, because it is scary to talk from maybe another point of view, or to speak of those things, that the earth is alive, that we have a relationship. People can think you are a hippie, or you are too alternative, or you are too woohoo, But if that's really what you feel inside, and you feel strengthened by that you're not the only one, which as a human is important, then it will help you to still speak it. And actually, I have not encountered any nasty response or mocking or criticizing at all. Actually, I've been noticing that I'm asked to say these things. That's what the response has been, not to reject or disqualify at all what I say, which maybe was my fear, but it hasn't happened. It might happen, but it hasn't. The opposite, actually. So it's very encouraging.
Yeah. Stepping into yourself, stepping into your authenticity, you've had encouragement and good responses.
Yes. That's it. Yes.
If people want to get a hold of you or contact you after this episode, how can they do so?
They can go to earthrestorativejustice.org, and you see my email address, which is femke@earthrestorativejustice.org. Or you can also go to LinkedIn, and you can find me there. So happy to hear from you, and it's always mutually nurturing for me to connect to those who work in this field. So thank you very much, Carrie, for this talk, and I really enjoyed it.
Thank you so much for being part of Integrative Lawyers of the World.
Thank you so much.